Hi everyone and welcome back to our year's journey. So in this episode I will proceed with the story of my first embolization. So we did the embolization and they woke me up and everything was fine, but I was a total mess. And as I said, I was transferred to the ICU after the operation for they monitor you usually for 1 day in the ICU. Then they send you back to your original room. And I had two of my friends waiting for me in the ICU. One who was with me for the operation, and the other came in while I was in the operating room. So they came to my room, and honestly, I was in a very bad shape. I couldn't see pretty well. My vision was pretty bad. I had severe double vision, and I also had severe vomiting as well. So I wasn't in a good shape, but at that point in time I wasn't sober enough to realize that I was weak on my left side, that I had partial paralysis on my left side. Maybe a couple of hours later I started getting a bit more sober, and I realized that my arm was pretty weak. I could barely move it, and there was a lot of pain in my arm. And I had a live pressure monitor in the artery in my arm, and I thought that was the reason. And I told my friend that I think this is blocking the blood flow in my arm, and this is causing my arm to be very weak. And I think I think my arm is cold as well, but it wasn't cold or anything. And sometime later, one of the doctors came to my room, and we spoke. And I told her that I think this is blocking the blood flow to my arm, and I'm feeling bad about it. And she told me that my blood pressure is looking very well, and there is no issue if we remove this. And she called the nurse to remove it, and this arterial pressure monitor was removed from my arm. And honestly, it didn't change anything. My arm was still as weak. The pain reduced, of course, because it was no longer in my arm, and it bleeded a lot until it stopped bleeding. But the weakness in my arm did not resolve at all. So later that night, my doctor came to me, and we spoke, and he told me that everything went fine, and he accessed the hardest to access or the deepest part of the AVM, and he closed it. He worked in the cerebellum, and they closed 25 to 30% of the AVM, which was a good amount to me, because I informed with the doctor before the operation that I want to do it slowly. I do not want to take any risks in my treatment. So the second day, I was seemingly getting better, and I was transferred to my original room, and I had my friend with me as well. He spent the day of the procedure with me, and the day after it, and then he went back to the Netherlands where he lives. So he spent that day with me, and honestly, as I said, I wasn't doing very well, and the days are a bit fuzzy. I cannot remember very much, but I remember at some point I was taken for an MRI for my brain, and I told them that I have a shunt implanted, and we need to correct the pressure setting of the shunt after the MRI. And they sourced this pressure regulation device. They sourced it very quickly, and I was taken to the MRI, and they did the MRI. And after the MRI, a few hours later, a group of doctors came to me, They told me that they noticed a fine line ischemia and that resulted from the operation, and this might be the cause of the weakness that I feel in my arm. And I did not really realize that my leg was very weak as well, because I was laid down in a bed, and I did not need to use it much because I did not move. But my arm, I couldn't use it. It was pretty much not functional. And later that day, my doctor came to me and he said that he looked at the MRI and there is no ischemia. It's nothing. It shouldn't be the reason for anything. But they worked in the cerebellum area, and it's a very delicate area in the brain, and this is what caused me this weakness on my left side. And the second day, my friend left and went back to the Netherlands, and my other friend went back to his work in Germany. And I was alone, and they sent me a physiotherapist and an ergotherapist to work with me on improving myself. And they started working with me, and they were training my arm, and they were teaching me how to walk again. And I picked up walking pretty fast, to be honest. It wasn't actually walking in the very sense of walking. It was someone moving, but it was very chaotic. But at least I was walking. The physiotherapist always held my hand and helped me walk, and I walked. And I started training myself also in the hospital. Every hour or two, I go out for a walk, a short walk in the ward. And the nurses were very nice. They always stood next to me while I was walking, or walked with me, just to make sure I do not fall. And I think I spent 10 days in the hospital also. As I said, it's a little bit fuzzy, but I think I spent 10 days in the hospital. And afterwards, I said, that's it, I want to go back home, because I wasn't feeling very good about everything. I was very frustrated about losing function in my left side, and it was very sad for me, to be honest. And I'm alone and in another country, so it wasn't easy by any means. But anyway, as I said, I was able to walk again. It wasn't exactly walking, but at least I walked. I was able to move. My arm was pretty much paralyzed. I think it was maybe 90% not functional. Now it's not completely functional, but at least I have function in my arm. I can use it. But anyway, I told them that I had my flight postponed for 2 days only, and I spent these 2 days in the hospital. And then I told them that I need to be discharged because I have a flight to catch. So I was finally discharged, and a friend of mine who lives in Germany, the one who was with me on the day of the operation, he came and took me from the hospital, and he took me to the airport. And I finally flew back home. There was some hiccups during the connecting flight, because the plane landed in Frankfurt, and it did not. There was no gate, so I had to take the stairs out of the plane, and then take the bus to the airport until the wheelchair comes. But I had some nice people who took care of me, and I finally got home. I was a complete mess, but at least I got home. I was happy because I was home with my family and everything. And my brother came and took me from the airport on the day of the arrival, and I was taken home and well taken care of. And I remember I was 49 kilograms when I came back home. I lost maybe 10 kilograms in the hospital. It's because I wasn't. The food was very nice in the hospital, but I wasn't mentally fine or psychologically fine. So I think that caused all these issues. But I finally at last got home and was happy and was starting to improve at least mentally, and I will take you through that and all the work that we did in the next time and the second embolization. So I will see you next time. Bye for now.